Hello, friends. Welcome to Akulmach Live. And today we are discussing about the topic of how do you reach out to thousands and hundreds and thousands of people. Talk about your offerings. Talk about whatever your ideas are, and make an impression. In fact, public gatherings, which is done with a purpose, is known as seminar. Very old concept. It has been going on for a very long time, and there were seminar specialists who used to do public speaking, and companies used to hire them to come to their seminar and make a dent, make an impression among the audience. And in the seminars, people used to call the selected crowd who they feel is important for the future of their companies. So this was going on. However, there was another concept of reaching out even larger audience, that is called webinar. For certain reason, the webinar was not made very popular, but the webinar concept took off quite well during the pandemic, and now people are now organizing huge webinars, lot of webinars in order to reach out to many people. There are always limitation to a physical event where the amount of people can come in to your venue is primarily limited by the seat capacity that venue can have. So bigger venue, you need to pay more, you need to spend more. However, there are no such limitations if you organize a webinar. Also, there are a lot of advantages of webinar over the seminars, and that is that since you're using the online mechanism, the audience can come from anywhere, and number of audience also are not limited, even though they are limited by the service provider who actually takes your feed to the audience. The cost of adding additional audience is hardly any cost. It's minuscule. So there are a lot of advantages in webinar. It really took off during pandemic. However, after 2023, some of the senior people in our industry who were finding it difficult to face the camera, and they did not had prior knowledge of reaching out to the people using camera and the online mechanism, they are trying to revive the webinar culture again. And I think it's in vain. It's in vain simply because today people don't want to travel 2 hours, reach the venue and then sit for a couple of hours and then have a cup of tea or coffee, and then come back, and by the time then probably 100-200 people will gather, and that is not sufficient footprint for networking. Whereas in case of webinar, you can actually create separate rooms. I mean, whole lot of technology which is available. In fact, some of the webinar providers are also including AI, so you can actually have a very immersive experience. So these are the advantages of webinar over seminar, and therefore today's session is dedicated on how do you create a engaging webinar. What are the tips and tricks? I've been organizing webinar for a very long time. I have organized several events, and I'm going to share all the tips and tricks in this video, so stick around. Before we proceed further, a word on our sponsor. This stream is sponsored by Myntra. So if you are fashion conscious and if you want to look at various schemes which are provided by Myntra, the link is given in the description below. Please check them out. All right. Now let's begin our tip section, or the tricks about seminar. How do you basically go about setting up a webinar, basically, not seminar, sorry. So the first point is you have to design the experience. When we talk about designing the experience, it's basically each and every aspect of the webinar. Since you are now dealing online, and there has to be multiple engagement that you would like to have during the session, and you have to also understand what are the limitations of the humans. See, in a physical seminar, people like to offer tea and coffee. So the concentration of human mind is best in the first 20 minutes. After that, it just wavers off. And if there is a lot of monotonous activity going on in your webinar, the chances are that after 20 minutes, people will start getting bored and they might leave and do something else. So you have 20 minutes of the time, which is very, very critical in the beginning. You need to basically start talking about what is this webinar, what is so interesting, what is coming up. All of those things you have to spell out. And to do that, you need to plan things, how these things will work in real life. What is the sequence? Maybe when you're sending invitation, you can send those, events, and if there is lucky draw for the sake of engagement, if there is some special status you are giving to certain people who are engaging with you, things like that. So you need to plan things. And therefore, the webinar, when you plan things, it should not be done in like 3 days. So you need to plan, you need to organize everything, you need to create all the resources that you need during this webinar. And once you announce the webinar, give it time for people to register for your webinar. Now, the webinar can be free, it could be paid also. So in order to create an engaging webinar, you need to have a plan. You need to offer them something which they like to hear. And it should not be a generic webinar, which you're just conducting to promote yourself. In today's world, nobody wants to listen to about you. They can probably read a elevator pitch anywhere. So what you need to do is you need to basically talk about the pain point that you're solving. And if you are able to solve the pain point, then people will be quite interested to hear what you are going to tell. And therefore, if you just make a generic speech, again, after a few minutes, people will not like it, and they will just move on. Remember, the ability of your webinar is to engage hundreds and thousands of people in single shot, in a single webinar. So if you are conducting a webinar, you have the ability to engage 100,000 people, which will not be possible in a physical seminar until and unless you book a stadium, right? So there is always, the reach is wide. So remember, when you are engaging with 100,000, hundreds, 50,000 people, hundreds and thousands of people, you have to be engaging. Your throughput should be very good. Your technology should be very good. Your flow of the webinar must be perfect. And if you're running the sprints of 20 minutes, because the human concentration is best in first 20 minutes. So if you're running sprints of 20 minutes, after 20 minutes, in order to improve engagement, what is that you're going to do? I mean, are you going to run some quizzes? Or are you going to change the face? Or are you going to allow them to network with each other? Or are you going to have a Q&A? All of these things needs to be planned before you start your webinar. All right. I mean, even before you actually plan your webinar. So let's move on to the second important item, that is the engagement strategies. Now, what are the engagement strategies? One of the engagement strategy is to find a good speaker who can connect online and who have who is capable of facing the camera, making the point, and talking to the larger audience without any hesitation. So if you are a CEO and if you have some inhibitions about going live on a webinar, especially when so many thousands of people are watching you, maybe you can actually start the webinar and get some other speaker who will actually make the point on your behalf, who is actually quite well versed with the camera. Many people don't see that as an issue, because if you are a leader, but then talking in front of camera is a totally different ball game. You can actually talk face to face. Talking to the camera is a different skill, and therefore make sure that you have the required skills, maybe in yourself or maybe in some other resource which you want to bring. Second thing is, engagement is very, very important, very critical in a webinar. Remember, you are reaching out to thousands of people using this webinar or an event. Make sure that your webinar is quite interesting. Many elements are being popped up, many quizzes are there. One of the method is to basically have some free gift associated. So you finish first 20 minutes, then for next 20 minutes, give it a break, run a quiz, winner will get something. That's very good engagement. Or if you're running an institute or you're running a webinar with the intention of getting footfall on your website, you can say the first 50 people will get a free product from your service or from your website. So you can say that. So people will straight away, start getting something for free. At the same time, your objectives are also getting fulfilled. So there are other engagement strategies. You can actually merge physical engagement with the webinar, and you can say that, look, I'm making the database of all these people who are responding to my quizzes or Q&A and things like that. And then you can say that, okay, look, all these people who have given the best comments, I will give them something. So make sure that you have the engagement policies very well defined. And if you have a good engagement, your webinar will be quite successful. So let's move to the next point, which is important for successful webinar, and that is the technology. Since let's compare the two. If you're comparing the seminar with webinar, what happens in a seminar is that the amount of people that can fit into the hall or your venue is largely dependent by the size of the hall or size of the venue. So if the venue can have 100 people, then only 100 people is the potential of 100 people to come into your seminar. But if it is a seminar, then there is no limit. There is a limit. Basically, if you're running the webinar on a Zoom platform or a Gmeet platform or any other popular platforms like WebEx, etc. There are so many others also. They provide the number of seats, how many people can come into your webinars. So by and large, most of the people provide up to 100 audience for free for first 40 minutes. However, if you make the subscription based on your based on how many people are coming, the price will be determined by number of connections these webinars will be able to hold. So people are actually conducting 100,000 people joining in their webinar, and price can be checked with the website. In fact, all these prices are listed on the Zoom or Gmeet websites, and you can engage with them. Also make sure that the resolution of these players is adequate. Some of the platforms provide very poor resolution, less than 720p. So make sure that at least high definition transmission happens, which is 1080p, because you never know how people are actually watching you. If they are watching you in a mobile, the small resolution or low resolution works out. But if they are watching you on a large screen monitor or a television, which most of the people, almost 50% of the people are now using televisions to watch various content. So if your webinar is being watched on television, the low resolution will actually blur up and it will get pixelated. So the quality of your transmission must be at least high definition, which is 1080p. Make sure that whichever service you are using, they are having capability of this kind of transmission, and the number of audience you can bring. Now, very important aspect is when you actually delivering your webinar, you must have a good broadcasting software, which you can learn maybe, or you can engage with somebody like our company and use that broadcasting software to bring in various elements to make your live stream engaging. You can also offer a paid webinar, so the integration of payment gateway must be also there with your registration page. So these are some tech things that you need to be very careful about. So plan how your webinar will be engaging, what kind of technology you will be bringing, how many people will be joining your webinar, how much subscription fee you need to pay for that event to the service provider. In your broadcasting software, what technology tools, etc. you need to bring, so that and also resources, also people, so that your webinar is engaging enough. All right. Just in case if you are stuck, you can reach out to us, to my company, and we will guide you how to set up a beautiful webinar for your beautiful and successful webinar for your company. All right. Let's proceed further to the next point. Make sure that the content is very crisp. The messages that you're giving are very straightforward. Make sure that the content is, some mind work has gone into creation of the content. So if the content is not very appealing, and content is always, you see, I always tell my clients not to give content which is about you, because nobody wants to know about you. However, if you're solving a pain point, how you're solving the pain point, what technologies you're providing, what benefit you're bringing to the people, I think that is a good selling point. So make sure that your content is not self-centered. It's basically focused on solving the pain points. You can organize a webinar whichever way you want. It's up to you. But if you keep talking about your company, yourself, you're doing so many thousands of dollars in revenue, you're opening new offices, who cares? Nobody cares about that. However, if you talk about the pain point that people are facing and you're solving that, that brings little value. And that is when you will actually convert your client using the content that you have developed. The kind of webinar that you're going to present will actually have online conversion. And today technology is very smart. In fact, on this live stream, I have integrated the e-commerce, so you can actually buy stuff. So similarly, if your content is leading towards an actionable point, and if you have an e-commerce associated or some sort of footfall that you want on your website is connected, then people will be able to click right there and take action, call to action basically. So make sure that your content is very, very specific to the client, and then call to action is always added. There is always something which is benefit to the client if they actually watch your webinar, whether free service, whether discounted service, whatever that could be. All right, let's move to the next point. One of the major item for a public gathering is to allow networking among themselves. They should be able to network with like-minded people. I mean, it depends. If you're having a very selected webinar of the CIOs of a particular companies, then you can actually have a mechanism where these people will communicate with each other and network with each other. So that is a good point, good selling point for people to come over for networking opportunities to your online event. At the same time, you don't want to go overboard and not provide any content and only provide networking capabilities. Then people will just pick up the phone, get out of your webinar and talk to each other. So therefore, this networking magic has to be planned by the people who have done online events, who have been there, done that. Make sure that if you do not have clarity, engage with somebody like my company or me, and we can guide you how to go about building the networking capability in your webinar. I mean, you need to allow people to communicate with each other also. You need to allow people to raise comments. You need to allow interested people to come and join your webinar with their video and with their mic. So those things can be configured easily, and you can bring people when they are asking questions. I mean, text is there, they can type in the comment, but if you allow them to join with their mic and camera, it will be a very good boost. So if you are not clear how to do that, we can help you create that environment where your audience will be able to join and network with each other using their mic and camera. So let's look at the other item, which is what you do after post event. So today we have a friend which we can use very effectively in our coordination activity, which is the AI. So a lot of AI, which is the generative AI, text generative AI, where you can actually train the AI to handle the communication post event. So depending on how people reacted or what questions people asked, the AI will be monitoring all of these things. You can configure the AI, you can download the free engines, configure them. And during the webinar, the monitoring will be done by the AI. And then AI will then send out specific tailor-made messages to each one of them. This is very important. Otherwise, using the older method, some human being will have to be there to understand, read all these thousands of messages, chat messages, and engage. Remember, friends, this is very, very important. When you organize a webinar, you must have a post-event strategy, because what happens is after the webinar is finished, people will then forget it. They will join some other webinar. There are thousands of webinars happening online. They will probably go to your competitors' webinar. So what is that? How you're basically remembering those, people who joined. One of the method is that you can actually have a CRM integrated, where when people register for your webinar, you start building your customer database, and then subsequently AI can be implemented to specifically reach out to those customers based on their behavior, based on their questions that they ask. If they are looking for some specific information, AI will be able to say, okay, you joined this webinar on such and such date. This is the questions you asked, and this is the solution that I'm going to offer, or a scheme or some sort of a sales pitch the AI can make without you monitoring a lot of things. So make sure that you have a post-event strategy figured out even before you started the webinar. So if you do all of these things that I have suggested, then your webinar will be very successful. Your company will grow. You will build a good clientele. You will have a better engagement. You will improve your footfall on your website. You will actually find new customers. You will actually convert instantly. These are hot conversions. So that is why it is very important to follow these guidelines. Just in case, if you have any doubt, please send a message, reach out to me. I will be more than happy to solve those doubts that you may have. However, if you follow these guidelines, you will be very, very successful. So friends, thanks for watching me live today, and I will catch you again in the next one.